Hello, hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of The Creator Compound. Today, I am normally being hosted with Liam, but today we have a very special guest, and that would be Mr. Oscar Armstrong, father, creator, and founder of the Botisimo program. Welcome.
Thanks, dude. Thanks for having me.
How are you doing?
Doing pretty good.
Pretty good.
Just enjoying a couple nice days of weather these past couple days and making a comeback from being frozen. So
it's crazy how that Texas weather just kind of like goes from, oh, it's -5 degrees to it's 70 degrees and you can wear shorts out. So
yeah, even in the same day sometimes.
even in the same day, exactly, which is always a fun time, guessing what the Texas weather is going to do. But hey, it's a nice place.
Yeah, I got a weather alert on my phone now just to be sure that it'll tell me like if the chance of rain is above a certain point during the day, it'll be like, yo, it's gonna rain today. Don't forget your umbrella is usually what I don't bring an umbrella, but
Gotcha. So I guess we should just go ahead and start with, who are you? Right? You're Oscar, but who else are you? What's the lore? What's the history? What's the backstory?
Oh man, the lore, the history. Well, yeah, I'm Oscar. I created Botisimo. I'm a software developer by trade. Kind of spun that together with my sort of more entrepreneurial tendencies to build my own company. But yeah, I mean, started from super humble background, I guess. Growing up in Houston, did get the opportunity to kind of move out to the suburbs. I think when I was about 10, I was fortunate to be kind of exposed to computers and games and all of that, like very young, thanks to my dad being in IT as a profession. And so it's just always kind of been in me to be very electronically inclined. Obviously love games, love computers, and all of that. Yeah.
Sweet. So I guess talk about that a little bit, like growing up, like what was kind of your first recollection or experience that you had with, I guess, gaming or kind of like the electronic side of producing content, or just like anything that's just kind of memorable that you feel like led to where you are today?
Yeah, so I mean, my earliest memory of playing games actually comes from a photo. So I don't know if you'd technically call that a memory, but it's a photo of me when I was probably like 2 or 3 years old playing Nintendo at my aunt's house on Thanksgiving, and that's like that day of the year is kind of like my memorable like video game time as a child was like going over to Thanksgiving at my family's house and just playing video games with all my cousins.
Right.
Was always like a super fun time as whenever I was a kid. And then my dad was really into I don't know if I should say really into, but my dad was into FPS games at the time. So maybe even a little too early. I was introduced to like Wolfenstein.
Oh wow.
Okay. Not an FPS at the time. Duke Nukem. It was a side scroller at the time. They did make an FPS version, and Quake. So I grew up sort of playing Quake with my dad. The internet wasn't quite as it wasn't quite as bad as it was. I remember my dad would have to protect me maybe from like a cuss word here and there, but there was no voice chat or anything. There was, so it was pretty easy. Just like, oh, this server's rowdy. Like, we'll just go to another server.
Okay. Gotcha.
So that was kind of my experience playing video games growing up, playing Quake with my dad, like getting internet for the first time, upgrading from having to have phone lines to getting like, I think at the time it was called like DSL or something like that. And that was a big deal because then we could both play at the same time.
Right.
Whereas before we had to basically like take turns playing the game because we only had one internet connection through the phone line.
Were you one of the kind of like, were you one of the early adopters, or was your family one of the early adopters of like really like faster internet, would you say? Because your dad is in IT.
Definitely. Okay. Yeah. My dad being in IT, like really, we were a very tech house. We had the dial-up modem whenever it was new, And we knew like if you picked up the phone and it started making that noise, you were in trouble, because that means that you just kicked dad off the internet. So, and then whenever we were able to finally get the DSL, I think I was probably like, I want to say I was like 10 whenever we got DSL. So that was really when my online gaming really started. Before that, it was kind of like playing little DOS games, playing Wolfenstein. I mean, if you've seen the original Wolfenstein, I mean, it's like we're talking just like pixels on the screen, right? So actually, kind of one of the nice things, like when I was exposed to these like violent, games, I guess as a kid, they weren't super graphic,
right?
So it's like
there's only so much they can show.
Yeah, it's not the same as now. If someone's playing like I don't even know, like Diablo, or maybe even like the newer Quake movies or games. Although they should make a Quake movie. The newer Quake games, is like much more gory and realistic looking than it was before.
Right.
So yeah, anyways, I have my dad to thank for my early adoption of tech, for sure.
Gotcha. So kind of going through childhood and going through high school, did that kind of relatively stay the same as you kind of progressed through high school and got into kind of your senior year of high school? Were you still interested in that?
Yeah, I definitely was always interested in computers and everything. I was also into sports as a kid too, though. So I had a pretty well-rounded childhood, I think. So I did play a lot of sports. Like I'd say some of my biggest role models have been sports. Like looking back on my childhood, obviously growing up in Texas in the 90s, Troy Aikman,
of course,
was like
the legend.
Dude, he was like my biggest idol whenever I was a kid and in elementary school. And then I really loved movies too, so that was kind of another piece of it.
Nice. Yeah. Very nice. So you graduate high school and, you're thinking about going to college. Did you have something in mind that you wanted to pursue, or were you just kind of trying to feel it out?
Yeah, so I sure did. Whenever I graduated high school, I was going to be an engineer. That was like my whole thing.
What kind?
Like a mechanical engineer, not a computer engineer. I wanted to be a mechanical engineer. I was super into, engineering. But funny thing, the reason why I loved it so much is I loved drafting in AutoCAD. I loved modeling, 3D modeling, all that kind of like building, building things in the computer. Funny enough, what I do now, but like building virtual objects in the computer, but then giving them actual like physics and watching like, okay, I've hooked this thing up. Now if I, you're using your mouse, but if I were to pull on this lever, then like what does the rest of like the thing do? I got super into modeling and I was like, oh, I'm going to be a mechanical engineer. I love this stuff. And then I went to school for it at Texas.
Different story.
Yeah, I went to school for it at Texas A&M, and it was very much like formulas, like nothing but just like memorizing formulas and learning obviously theory and all the principles and everything. And obviously all that stuff is super important and it makes sense that they teach it, but it just like that wasn't really what got me interested in engineering. I was much more of like a hands-on type of person.
Right.
And when you go, I don't know what all schools are like, but when I went to the engineering program at A&M, it's like they throw you into like electricity and magnetism classes where you're like doing, theoretical like electrical circuits and stuff like that, which I mean, I guess now that I say it now, it sounds cool, but it was all theoretical. It was all just on paper.
It wasn't a lot of hands-on stuff, and that's where it was
just like learning formulas and theory, and I was like, it's not really for me. So I ended up going back home to just like to a community college in Houston and spent a year. I actually kept pursuing the engineering courses because I was like, I just like didn't know what else to do. I was like, I'm just gonna stay on this path and like keep taking like Calc 2 and the next physics class. Sorry, I'm above the table. Calc 2 and physics class and stuff like that. But then after that year, my mom actually told me about this program at UNT. That's the communication design program there, where they do graphic design.
Yeah.
And that was obviously her kind of realizing that it was really like the AutoCAD and it was really like the creative piece of it that had like really captured me. So I was like, okay, yeah, that sounds awesome. I went and enrolled. So it took me 7 years in the end to get out of school, like for the whole stint, right? Changing my major and everything, because the program that I went to is like a very strict 4-year program. Like every semester is a prerequisite for the next semester, like all the way through. So that really got me just like in school and excited about school and doing school, and like far enough into it that I was like, gonna finish regardless. But of course, about 3 years in is whenever I really kind of discovered software and coding. And that was really kind of the defining moment, at least for like the rest of my adulthood.
And now, was that part of the curriculum that you had in the communication design major? Was programming, coding built into that? Was it like an aspect of it, or was it something that you completely discovered on your own time?
It is something that I completely discovered on my own time. Me and my roommate at the time had this idea for a website, it was the point of the website was like that, like a brand or a company or an organ or any organization could run like a video contest. It was kind of going to be like a YouTube, but instead of it just being like people just upload videos, it'd be more like for a purpose. So like, let's just say an example, a brand like Cane's Chicken. They would go onto this website and start a contest for, make the next Cane's Chicken commercial concept and send it in, and all the Cane's fans would send in their submissions, and then the Cane's, whatever the Cane's could pick the winner, and there were monetary prizes and different stuff like that. And that was kind of the point of the website, which funny enough is like kind of a version of TikTok in a way, of like what TikTok has become, right?
Well, I was about to say, I mean, I feel like you were on the wave of future is user-generated content before everybody else knew.
Exactly. It was very user-generated content focused, and it was actually before video was mainstream.
Okay.
So
and what year was
everyone
this?
didn't have. I'd say this was probably like 2009 or 2010 maybe.
Okay, so a couple years after YouTube is launched, they're still kind of getting
and a few years after the iPhone came out. But I mean, this is not like everyone didn't have an iPhone,
right?
Like people still had like Motorola phones and stuff like that. So video was like not quite mainstream like it is now. So our little idea that we had didn't really like take off or anything, but the process of building that is what, like, I built it. I was like, I don't know who could build this. I don't know anyone who can build this. So I'm just going to figure out how to build it. And so I started just like reading up tutorials on PHP and watching videos. So at least I had that. Like YouTube had come out, lots of YouTube content on programming and coding. And really kind of the emergence during that time of like online code academies and online code schools. Because of the fact that code is verifiable and you can automate it.
Right.
So people were able to build these websites where it teaches you how to code, and it actually grades you and like makes sure that you're doing it right and your code is actually doing what it's supposed to do without there having to be like a teacher. So so there were quite a bit of websites like that out there kind of competing in the space, and they were all giving away free trials.
Right.
So I was just like rolling over from one
going.
code school to the next, just like taking classes for free.
Gotcha.
So I just kind of there was definitely a luck aspect to just like my timing in the greater scheme of things.
Right.
On that front.
Interesting. And this is also at the same point in which you meet Rich, who is your current co-founder, right? In college, y'all met?
Yeah, actually right after college.
Right after college.
Yeah.
Okay. And how did y'all meet?
So I had been learning self-teaching how to code and everything. So I wanted to go work somewhere. I wanted to build apps, actually, like mobile apps, like iOS apps. Because like I said, the iPhone was like pretty new. This was when the App Store was just
in its infancy, really.
almost any app could be a success.
Yeah.
Because there was just not, it wasn't, flooded with apps at the time. Anyways, so I really wanted to build mobile apps. I wanted to learn how to build mobile apps. So I started looking at some studios down in Dallas. I got an internship at a studio called Dialexa.
Right.
My last year in college. And they kind of helped me. I was more on the design side, but I got to design and work on the mobile apps.
Okay. And that was
then
your first job out of college, right?
That was still my senior year,
Senior
technically.
year, okay.
And it was like an internship. So, but I used that experience of just doing that for my last year to get a job in Deep Ellum here in Dallas at a place called Seneco at the time. And Seneco was a hybrid of, they had a product side, so they had a couple internal products that they worked on and built and maintained completely in-house. And then they also did, they had a studio like services side where if you were a company and you needed an app built or you needed a website or something like that, they would do that for you. And then that was more of like a deliverable kind of thing, like we build this thing for you and then we give it to you and now it's yours to deal with.
Okay.
But they had a couple in-house products and that's what I was focused on.
Okay.
So that was my product experience, and Rich was the creative director at this company.
I see.
When I got there.
So what exactly were you doing there at that current job? Like, what was your role and responsibilities?
I started out as just like a software developer, like an entry level software developer. I'd say I at least got to get in just above junior. Because I did have a little bit of experience doing that internship at Dialexa.
Right.
But I was just a software developer there to start. I got put on sort of a new product that they were working on called iCall, which is a VoIP product for small businesses. If you've ever heard of now you have like Google Voice and you have Grasshopper and stuff like that. That's what this was supposed to be. I do think it's still a company. I haven't worked there in a long time. But anyways, I worked on that and I built the iOS app for it. Okay. So it was like an app that you could download on your phone and you could receive and make phone calls on it. Just like your normal phone, but it all went through the internet instead of through like your phone service.
Gotcha.
So you could actually have a Wi-Fi only enabled phone and make phone calls and receive phone calls on it.
Okay.
And it was like, a SaaS platform of, pay $2 a month per phone number, pay X dollars per 1,000 minutes type of, it was like a pay as you go.
Yeah.
And it was really meant for like small businesses to have like a cheap, like customer service phone or, whatever.
Gotcha.
Rich worked on that as well. Rich did all the design and everything for that. But I did a good job and delivered and did everything I was supposed to on that project. So I got put on to the next, their bigger, more established product called Send Inc., which is email encryption software. Similar thing, SaaS platform, sign up, pay a monthly subscription, and you can send and receive encrypted email. It was really targeted and mostly used by like the medical space. So any sort of company that needs to be like compliant, I believe it's called like PCI compliant or something like that. They're kind of required to use it. So like you've gotten an email from your doctor before, I'm sure, that says, click this link to read the message. You get the email, but the email doesn't really have the message.
Right.
You have to click the link. And then you have to log into your account that you've created, and then you can see the message.
Right.
So that's kind of what we did. We provided a service for hospitals, dentists, stuff like that to do that. So from there, that was kind of, I got to step up. I basically became like the CTO of that business, the Send Inc. business. That business actually got sold to another mail company that wanted the encryption tech. And I left for to go work remote, basically. I had been working downtown in Deep Ellum, and I was ready to get out of town and just kind of work remote for a little bit, and kind of had these thoughts of maybe I could be like a traveling worker or like whatever, that type of stuff.
So around this time, around what, 2015, 2016, you start to come up with the idea for Botisimo, correct? Around that time period.
Yeah. So
What kind of spurred that?
so one of the things that I wanted to do was I wanted to start streaming, and that was part of my drive to be like more of like a work from home type of situation, because you gain back like
A
2
lot of
hours a
time.
day,
Yeah.
2 hours a day by living that way, and so I would use those 2 hours streaming, and I was streaming in the morning actually from like 8 to 10. So I thought it was funny that most of my viewers were like either in Europe or Australia, just because it's late night for
Time
them.
zones, right?
So I just had such a good time kind of doing that.
And what were you streaming?
I was streaming a mobile game called that was the second one that I played. It was called Summoner's War.
Okay.
So it's like a gacha style game, kind of. I always say it's like Pokemon meets Final Fantasy VII.
Right.
So it's kind of like Pokemon in that you like collect monsters and level them up and like do all this stuff. And there's like a bunch of different monsters that you can get and they evolve and all of that. But it's like Final Fantasy in that they're like, it's more targeted towards like older people.
Right.
Like obviously all the Pokemon are like very cute and cuddly, like little animals and whatever. This game is like maybe a little bit more kind of they're like fighters and warriors and stuff like that. So just a more mature, I don't know, mature is not really even the right word, but just like an older Pokemon game.
It's definitely catered towards more an older audience.
Yeah. I mean, so I really enjoyed playing that. I would stream that, and the reason why I started building Botisimo is because I just like I found myself sitting there with Streamlabs, Nightbot, Me6, and at the time there was even like ScottyBot for Mixer, Firebot for YouTube, and so I was just like, man, this is a lot of stuff that I need. And I just had this super simple idea of like, I'm just going to make like a little app that does all of this stuff for me.
Right.
So I don't have to have all of these different services. I'll just, it really like the first iteration of Botisimo is like hard coded like to my account only. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it was never meant really to be like something else that other people use. It really was just. So it started out as like this little thing that I was just going to run on my computer, and it was just going to kind of simplify this little thing for me. And then it became, oh, you want to try this? Okay, well, I'm going to package it up, and then you can run it on your computer.
Right.
Like you can download it from GitHub or whatever and just run the code on your computer and plug your username and your password into it and all of that.
Now, was this something you downloaded onto your computer at the time?
It was,
Okay.
yes. So you'd have to actually put it on your computer. You would have to have Node on your computer, Node.js, the runtime, and then you could run this thing.
Okay.
Not too crazy. Node was very achievable or attainable for most systems at the time, but Python would have been better because Python's like basically on every computer. But nonetheless, I wrote it in Node. So the second iteration was kind of like you can download it and run it yourself. And then I was like, you know what? I know how to build cloud-based products. Like that's like what I did.
Yeah.
And so I was like, you know what? I'm gonna SaaSify this thing. I'm just gonna run them in the cloud. We'll run the bots for you. And then even at the time, I hadn't even really thought about like subscriptions or anything like that. It was just kind of like, I'm just going to do this thing, put it in the cloud and kind of see what happens. Well, it got some pretty good traction because of a lot of it having to do with timing. So first of all, it's worth noting that at the time, Streamlabs did not have CloudBot. CloudBot was at the time AnkBot, and it was a code repository just like mine that you had to download and run on your own computer.
Okay.
It was called AnkBot. Streamlabs, I don't know if they acquired AnkBot or just adopted it because it was an open source project. So I don't guess they would have had to like buy it. Maybe they just like consumed it or assumed it, hired the people that were working on it.
Streamlabs
would be a
tends to
good
do
way.
that.
I mean, that'd be a good way to kind of consume an open source project and not get too much like pushback from the community if you're also like hiring all the developers that worked on it.
Right.
So, hey, I don't know how they went about it, but they basically they brought in AnkBot, and then they sassified AnkBot. So that's what they like added to it is they took AnkBot and put it into the cloud.
Okay.
So anyways, so Botisimo was really the first cloud chatbot that worked on multiple platforms.
Okay.
Nightbot already existed for Twitch only.
Right.
And for YouTube only. Mm-hmm. You had to just like literally create 2 different Nightbot accounts.
I see.
One for each one.
They didn't work in tandem with each other.
Right.
Okay.
And so Botisimo was the first chatbot that actually worked on multiple platforms in the cloud on one account.
I see.
So I can log into my one account, I can hook up my Twitch channel, I can hook up my YouTube channel, and of course like my Discord channel or Discord server, and configure and create chat commands and giveaways and do all that stuff across all 3 of those platforms simultaneously, as opposed to having to kind of swap around different accounts or even services, like, because again at the time and even still, you would need a separate bot for Discord.
Right.
Like, none of them really worked in Discord at all.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of the main thing that caught on. And the reason why the multi-platform thing was so important is because at the time there was a little streaming platform called Mixer. And if you know anything about kind of the way that streaming platforms work, is that when a new streaming platform emerges, there is a rush of creators to that new platform.
Right.
Because there is also a rush of viewers to that new platform.
Everyone's trying to capitalize.
And there is there's a lot of market to be captured on that new platform. So there's always, like, every time there's a new platform, there's kind of this like gold rush where everybody like goes there to try to capture the viewer market as much as they can. And it's kind of it's something that smaller creators really do a lot too, right? Mm-hmm. Like, smaller creators are very quick to be like, I'm gonna go try out this new platform and actually get some viewers, because there's not 1,000 people playing the same game as me over here. There's only like 10. Mm-hmm. And so it draws a lot of smaller creators over. It tends to get that platform a lot of hype early on, but then that, a lot of times it kind of fades away over time. And we've seen that happen multiple times, obviously, but Mixer was kind of the one that a lot of people thought was going to stick because it got acquired by Microsoft.
Right.
And everyone kind of saw that as like, oh, okay, this is like the real deal now.
Alongside the signing of Ninja and Shroud, right?
Yeah.
To be exclusive of the platform.
And so there was a huge gold rush of, I say gold rush, there was a huge amount of creators participating in that gold rush of like transitioning over to Mixer. And having an option out there to be able to adopt a bot like Botisimo that you didn't have to just completely abandon Twitch, but you could like, oh, I'm going to adopt this bot. It's going to work for Mixer, but also for Twitch. So, and I'd also say that when Mixer kind of came out, and then YouTube Gaming, but like YouTube Gaming was kind of a joke at first, but now it's kind of caught on more in the last like 5 to 10 years maybe.
Right.
When those came out, was also the emergence of multi-streaming.
Yes.
So the idea of having a multi-platform bot that could work on multiple platforms simultaneously became even more important. And so it's actually why if you go and you look back, you'll see that Botisimo and which is like sort of the chat side and the engagement side of things, and this other service that you've probably heard of called Restream, which is the same. It solves a lot of the same problems, but it does it from the video side, right? You can stream to multiple platforms at the same time. Those 2 companies actually emerged like basically at the same time in those same sort of like market conditions.
Gotcha. So I want to talk a little bit about the sponsorship program, because I feel like that's one of the more unique aspects of the Botisimo platform. Explain to me where that idea kind of came from. Was it coming from a direction of, hey, we need to be able to monetize this platform and make it a real thing, or was it more something catered towards like just like thinking about the users themselves, right?
I'd say it was a combination of both of those things. It's like one of the things that I set out to do whenever I started Botisimo and like really kind of turned it into a business and like really sassified it, is that I wanted to be an actual real chatbot company. Like, again, kind of there was at the time, there was a lot of chatbot tools that you could just go online and download and run, but there was no support. There was no, they weren't necessarily being updated all the time with, probably like an example. Sometimes like, hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But like an example is kind of like Nightbot, right? Like Nightbot is kind of the same thing that it was 10 years ago, because it's not a monetized business. Like you just sign up, you just use it for free. And it's, so what we wanted to do was do something that can be more agile, more, take more risks on new features, new platforms, right? Like being able to go out and build an integration for an emerging platform, not really knowing whether that platform is really going to catch on or not.
Right.
And that kind of affords us the ability to like be those innovators. So that's like sort of the why. Like, hey, we want to be like a real business. We want to be able to support you with like premium support. We want to be able to have developers that are fixing your problems for you. Obviously, it's all running in the cloud, so there are just like some actual costs involved. But of course, the second piece to that is that we're thinking about the users and thinking about how can we not put that on them, right? Like, how can we have someone else pay? Like, the creators are also here trying to generate revenue from their, content. So we didn't want to ask them for money.
Right.
Don't get me wrong, we have a premium subscription and you can brand your chatbot and all that kind of stuff, but that's all pretty optional. But we did want to give them a way. We wanted to have a way to monetize the platform while also letting the creators monetize their content.
Gotcha.
Right? So the idea was we want to make money, but we only want to make money because you made money. That was kind of the thinking.
Okay.
And that's why the sponsorship program, or that's how we kind of came up with that concept, is like, okay, how is gaming and esports and content funded? Through brand deals.
Through brand deals, right?
Like, okay, well, how could we use that to generate revenue, so that we're generating revenue for our business and also for the content creators who are running their businesses using our platform. Right. And I'm super like proud to say that right now we have very favorable creator splits. Our sponsorship program only takes 20%. So very competitive with kind of the 70-30, 80-20 splits that are out there. And what's really cool about it is that there's really no minimum required, right? Like, you don't have to stream a certain amount or have a certain number of viewers or anything. Like, if you're just one person reaching one other person, there's a brand out there that finds value in like that one person even. And of course, our value to the brands is that now we can take, instead of the brand having to reach out to one creator that reaches 1 million people, we can have the brand reach out through 10,000 creators who have, or let's say, 10,000 creators who have 10 viewers each. And now you're still able to reach scales of people.
In the same way. Yeah.
But you get to do it. What I like to sort of pitch the altruistic aspect of it is like, but you get to do it by helping out the little guys and not just like funneling all your money to the top 1% of content creators all the time.
Right.
So there's definitely sort of there's an emotional appeal to this approach as well, I think.
Gotcha. So interesting. So around 2019, 2020, you start looking for funding or for a partnership between a couple different esports organizations. What was the idea there? Were you just wanting to get Botisimo into the hands of some larger creators, or just to get the word out?
It's kind of twofold. Something that we hadn't touched on yet is that one of the other big differentiating factors of Botisimo versus like Streamlabs or Stream Elements is that we have team-centric tools as well. So in the same way that you can have a bot that runs in all of your different channels, now imagine that a team can have a bot that runs in all of their creators' channels. Right. That's what our platform does. So our platform actually has a sort of a team layer above the creator layer where you can have a team, managers. They can manage all of the different content creators, chatbots and settings, but they can also create like team-wide chat commands, team-wide giveaways, and things like that run in every channel connected to the team. So it allows to just like distribute the bot automation and functionalities like even more. So with those two things together, obviously esports organizations was kind of like the way to go. We were kind of looking at bigger like content groups as a target early on, like Dude Perfect and stuff like that. But as we kind of reached out to them and talked to them, it kind of turned out like they really have like one channel, and they just make content and put it out on that one channel. Well, esports is unique in that they have a bunch of content creators that all have their own channels. And the reality is that all of those channels even kind of have their own sort of like cultures and different stuff, right? And different fans. Like just because you watch one person doesn't mean you watch another player on that same team. So there's a lot more need to coordinate and try to mesh that all together. Right. So Botisimo really helps with that. That's how we ended up sort of targeting esports, which is seeing like, oh, this is sort of the industry that has the biggest need for this right now. I believe that everyone's going to need this. Like the future is every brand, every company has their own Twitch, has their own, and I don't even mean like Twitch channel. I mean like everyone's going to eventually have their own just like media outlet. Like you're going to watch like Target TV and like Walmart TV and stuff like that. And so live streaming is just getting bigger and bigger. Everyone eventually is going to need this stuff. But right now, esports is kind of on the cutting edge, like the frontier of this whole thing. And so seeing Envy was very appealing because we wanted them as a customer to start with. Seeing them as kind of like an ideal customer for what we're doing, but also to have them as a feedback loop. Right. Like I said, the esports orgs are kind of the orgs that are scaling up their content in this way and running into problems and maybe difficulties that other organizations have never run into because they've never done this before. And so we're just trying to solve those problems, for them as they come and continue to iterate and make our product better. Obviously, it's a great relationship there. So when we originally reached out to Envy, it was like a sales call. Like we wanted to get them on our platform to like use our product. We came down, did a demo for a couple of the execs, and they were super interested in just like the tech in general. We kind of came back again, had a couple more conversations. And it just kind of came out that like, hey, we're also looking for a little bit of funding, and it was not a lot of money at the time. So it's like to them, it was kind of like, well, we could spend $5,000 a month on this platform, or we could just put in an investment of like, I don't know if I should say how much. I guess it doesn't matter.
I think it's public. On your LinkedIn.
It's all public. So yeah. Or we could just put in like $100,000 to $200,000 right now and just like own a piece of it and use it, right? And so it was a pretty simple proposition, an easy decision to make on their front for the initial investment for sure. Just like, you know what, hey, we're gonna kick in a little bit of dough, help these guys out, help stabilize these guys a little bit, and just like get to work on this thing with them. And so that's what we did. They joined on as, just like a minor stakeholder in the company. They offered us an office space, so gave us a couple desks. It was still only like 3 of us at the time. It was basically me, Rich, and I mean, really, even the third person was Eric, our customer service, but he actually is remote in Fort Worth, so he didn't even come down to the office. So early on, it was pretty much just me and Rich. So they gave us a couple desks and let us work here, and obviously gave us access to their team for questions, their marketing, their activations team, all that kind of stuff. So
nice.
That was kind of how it started. And then, I don't know if you want to direct me a little bit more.
Yeah. I just got, 2 more questions. So in July of 2022, you end up being acquired by what's now kind of luck or random based.
Yeah. So I guess I'd say 50-50. I definitely have to give luck all the credit that it's due. I've always said that I'm not like a super lucky person, like in the moment. Like if I tend to fall to Murphy's Law a lot, like, if you drop a piece of toast, like it lands butter down on the ground, like those little things, I don't have the best luck. But when it comes to sort of like bigger picture things, I tend to have a lot of luck on that front, so just like I was talking about earlier, just like having a dad in IT and getting me involved in this like so young, that's obviously all luck. But at the same time, I have to give a little bit of credit to my younger self who really like grinded it out and like learned how to code, right? Like that was hard work. Building Botisimo itself was fun. Learning how to code Botisimo
not fun
was hard work. But Botisimo being a success when it was, definitely a lot of luck there. As I kind of explained earlier, the way that the streaming platforms were kind of emerging and falling, the tech ecosystem at the time, the whole mixer thing, and multi-streaming kind of taking off, and the rise of esports. So right, like all of those things kind of converged together at the same time of me building this platform, and that was completely luck. I never set out like I'm gonna make a bot for esports. Like that was not the plan. It just kind of we just continued to explore like the fit, Obviously we have the consumer side and that all is awesome, but we really wanted to figure out how to make something that would really serve these these orgs that are doing it at a bigger scale. And so we've just continued to explore that, and so a little bit of hard work now, a lot of luck before, and then a little bit of hard work before that.
Gotcha. Well, I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come onto the podcast and kind of tell about the story and the lore of Botisimo. It's always, I think it's from a listener perspective, I always like really appreciate kind of listening to the incubation and the creation of like these really large scale products. So appreciate you coming in. That's going to be it for this podcast episode. If you guys enjoyed it, feel free to leave a like down below. And if you really enjoyed it, feel free to subscribe. It's completely free and really helps us kind of bring more value to our users and bringing awareness to kind of the Botisimo platform and making sure that we can take care of those smaller creators. So appreciate you guys for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace.